Welcome back. We now know how to use components quite well, so I'd like to keep on building on that knowledge. So let's focus on the action bar. This has to be made into a component as well. So here's what I propose. Select all the elements like so. Now use Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V to paste it inside the resources frame. Or you can simply drag out a copy, whatever works best for you. Now remove the rectangle because we don't need it. Now let's do this. Select these three icons, the hamburger menu, the filter, and the search. These all need to be made into components. And we do have an option right here where we can make multiple components through a single click. Just like that. Awesome. Now why not the drop down? Because we already have it here. In case you don't, please handle that. Okay, let's raise them up so we can see all the original components up top. Okay, now drag out some copies. First, the hamburger menu, then the other two. Okay, it's time for some auto layouts. So Shift-A, right? 3 on the left side, Shift-A. And then 2 icons on the right side, again Shift-A. Speaking of that, remember to use Shift-A on the original master components, on the icons themselves. That's super important. Okay, now we're gonna keep it simple. So we need 40 between the icons on the right, and then 20 for the ones on the left. Now, could we set up different margins? For example, 10 pixels between the dropdown and the city name? Sure, of course, but those types of details make things a bit more complicated than they need to be, so I'm always gonna choose simplicity whenever I can. Okay, to have a nice background, we're gonna have to select both auto layouts and then use Shift-A once again. Basically now this is a single element. And because of that, we can of course add a fill. Pure white please, though we're gonna need to change the padding. The settings are fairly simple though, 32 pixels on either side. As for the height, you could keep it set to 0. And here's why. Move up top. Now here, both of these drop downs should be set to fixed. Now, why fixed? Because we don't need any flexibility. We want 720 for the width and 112 for the height. Now, could we make it flexible, responsive? Sure we could, but as I said, let's keep it simple because that's not needed. Finally, we need to change the position of the content to center. This is done by clicking here. Simple enough. And one more thing, we need to change the arrangement to space between. Packed doesn't really help us, so yeah, change it. In essence, this is done and we can make it into a component. Okay, great stuff. Now let's make it editable like we just learned. So start with the text, Control-click to select it. Next to the content, click on this arrow. For the name, text is just fine, and for the default value, that can remain San Francisco. Next, the drop down. Here's where I want you to pause. See, if you Control-click it, you may get this layer, the actual vector, and you might get angry because there aren't any settings here, right? The only thing you see is this icon that says Select Instance, and that's Figma's way of telling you, hey, you've actually selected the wrong thing. I don't think you need to be here. So you can't do anything to the actual vector. You need to work on the instance. So you can click here, or you can just use the layers panel to actually select the instance. You can recognize it by this empty diamond icon. Okay, good stuff. Now let's apply a boolean because we might want to turn it off. This is done by using this icon here from the layer section. Okay, let's change the name to show dropdown. Now, do we need to apply a swap instance property? I don't really think so for this one. We're probably gonna keep this icon. But what about the rest? 100% we do want that. So start with the hamburger menu. Click here to create an instance swap. And when it's time, please name it to, let's say, icon 1. Then select the filter. Not the auto layout, but the instance of the filter. Create a new one and let's call it icon 2. Finally, the search icon, a new property, that's called icon 3. And we're done. But we have to try it out. So let's make a copy of this action bar and let's try to replace an icon. Let's go with the hamburger menu. So for example, say that we want to replace it with the GPS icon. So does it work? And yes, it does. Now, here's the thing. In case the GPS icon is distorted, find the master component and then use Shift-A. I already did that. Now, play with it and see if everything works well. When swapping an icon, you might notice a drop down here. You have local components and preferred. This second one is useful in case you want to import a huge library of icons, hundreds of icons, maybe even thousands. So what you don't want to do is scroll like a madman. So what you do is you choose a few icons that are more likely to be used. To change the preferred list, please do this. Select the main component, then go here and click on this symbol to edit it. From here, you're gonna get preferred values. And now you can hit this plus icon. Basically, you can check the components that you might need more often than not. In case you can't manage, just use this toggle to change the viewing mode. And because we're here, let's change something because, icon 1, 2, 3, that doesn't make any sense. So you can actually double click here to rename them. For example, icon left makes much more sense. Then icon right 1, and then icon right 2. And that's much better. We're just about done with it. But I think we forgot something quite important. What if there's no title? So select it in the main component and let's apply a Boolean property for it as well, because it may happen. So this time around, call it show title, for example, because the actual text might change. But what about the two icons on the right side? Are we always gonna need them? I don't think so. So let's do the same thing. Show icon right 1, and then we're gonna have show icon right 2. So these can be set to true by default. And when you're done, go back to the clone, to the instance, and test it out. We're not gonna apply a Boolean to the hamburger menu because in most apps, the back icon is always present. Okay, you can remove the title, you can remove the right icons. Now, to be honest, I'm very proud of you for making it this far around. Trust me, when I first got started learning about these properties, these components and whatnot, I had a tough time with it. I learned it step by step. It was frustrating at first. I wasn't finding the right properties, but I'm very happy to say that with patience and practice, I eventually got it, and so will you. Let's take a break so you can catch up. Thank you.